and welcome to Olivia's Book Club, the podcast. And I'm your host, Olivia Fierro, still sharing books with you and profiling amazing authors as we enter this new year. And one book that I know is so highly anticipated is Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins, after her big hit, The Wife Upstairs, not to mention her many other books that are geared towards a different audience. So excited to have Rachel join us today. Happy New Year, happy publication, and all of the good stuff that's coming your way in 2022.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here chatting about this book with you.
The covers are gorgeous. I'm staring at kind of the symmetry. Now, I don't have a physical copy of Reckless Girls. I read it off of NetGalley, but I'm in love with my hardcover Wife Upstairs, which went to Mexico with me and back over a spring break vacation. And I kept it pristine.
Yes, very nicely done. Like there's no chlorine stains on that or anything. I'm impressed.
And I usually do dog ear, and I didn't because I just love the visuals of these covers. So when you come off of a big hit like that, and that just got people right away, right? Then you have to, you're setting the bar up here. How did you approach Reckless Girls?
It helps that I wrote all of Reckless Girls before Wife Upstairs came out. So that was really nice. So it was already done by the time The Wife Upstairs hit stores. So I didn't have as much sort of pressure as I probably could have. But it also helped that this was 100% the book that I wanted to write when I was 12 years old. So I had a lot of excitement going into it already. So, and it kind of distracted me from The Wife Upstairs promo starting up and all that kind of stuff. No, I was busy with this book now. I could kind of detach from that a little bit. So that always helps.
Well, I'm fascinated by, and it's been just such a rush to talk to talented authors through this podcast, because I've just always loved reading. And there's nothing greater than the gift of creating something that someone can sit down quietly by themselves and just dig in and go someplace else, especially when we're coming off of the couple of years we've had, and we're stuck at home and maybe not going to tropical islands like we wanted to or whatever. And it just, the ability to take people away is a profound gift. And then I meet you authors who also happen to have good personalities, which is crazy because I want to believe that you all are lacking in some big capacity. It's all interesting here and all here. And also the business savvy to understand this pretty complex industry. So let's go backwards a little bit. And for those who might be listening who haven't read your books yet, you write a lot for different audiences. So what are our roots?
Yeah, so I have always loved reading a lot of books across, I will read just about anything. And so I grew up in relatively small town Alabama, and we had a fabulous library. And I was pinging all over the place. I was reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Little House on the Prairie. And then I graduated and I was reading Danielle Steele and Stephen King and Dean Koontz. And then I was reading true crime. And I have always been a really voracious reader, and I love to read all kinds of different things. And so it feels kind of natural, I guess, that I sort of started writing a lot of different things. I started out writing young adult books because I was a high school English teacher, and through kind of checking out what my kids were reading, I stumbled onto YA and was oh, well, this is really cool. And I'd like the chance to try to do this. So I wrote my the first 10 books I wrote, I guess, were all young adult or middle grade books. And then it had been 10 or 11 books. It had been 10 years. And I was just really ready for something a little different. I sort of felt like I had done everything I wanted to do in the children's lit sphere. So I thought, well, I will try my hand at thrillers because I love those. And then while I was doing thrillers, I was also, maybe I'll write a romance under a totally different name. And so, yeah, It basically just comes down, it's ADD basically, let's be real. Um, it's I want a little bit of everything, you know.
And it's amazing because it does make sense. If you have the gift of writing and you know how to craft a story and make compelling characters and take your reader somewhere, why couldn't you take them to all these different places, spaces, and emotions, just like you enjoy diving into the reading experience on the other end?
Right, exactly. It's because you get to learn so many different things, you know, for each different book. You get to go to different places, spend time with different people. So yeah, I was actually writing Reckless Girls in 2020 while I was also writing my romance, The Ex-Hex, under the name Erin Sterling. And that's like a very like autumnal Hallmark movie, but Halloween and but spicier. And so I joked that I was like, I got these two very different experiences writing these two very different books, but man, did I need them that year. So yeah.
Yeah, you had the time. That was the right time to be doing double
Exactly.
duty. So
Exactly.
people come up with the other name, the pseudonym.
Right. Yeah. So I basically, because I knew that like The Wife Upstairs was sort of my adult debut, and I didn't want to sort of get in the way of it at all. And I didn't want people sort of being like, wait, how many books does Rachel Hawkins have coming out? It just felt like a smart idea to come up with a pseudonym. So, but I'm obviously I'm super open about it. All my social media is under the same stuff. Like I couldn't hide that if I tried. And yeah, so and then like the name I just kind of made up on the fly. It's a mix of middle names in my family. And so then I was kind of like, oh, maybe I should have like thought that through. I mean, I like Erin Sterling, it's a good name, but I was like, maybe I should have like given that a little more thought, like before just
The whole
leaping
like putting
in.
on another hat and like getting in that mindset of a different identity. Like if you're writing in that as Erin and you're doing a whole different thing and everything is, I mean, people should have to approach you and call you by a different name and sort of like create a new ambiance for you.
Yeah, it was really weird getting used to like being in like Zooms like this or things and people saying Erin, and I'd be like, oh yeah, me. Oh yeah, okay. Which is funny because I've got friends who have pen names, and I've always struggled with like going back and forth between calling them by their pen name and their real name, even when there's no reason to be using their pen name, like we're hanging out at their house having dinner. But sometimes it's just hard, you know? So I feel like that will probably happen to me eventually too.
Definitely. And I've done that in my interviews too, where I'm like, wait a second. Okay, you go with the book name. You go with the book name. Like,
Right,
I don't know
right.
what else to do. So before we get deep into Reckless Girls, what is reflect for a moment on The Wife Upstairs and how
Mhm.
successful it was. And I mean, it was just for me like everything I like in a book. I mean, it just gave it all to me and just beautifully. And I was completely there in that fancy neighborhood and ready to walk a dog and, be in it. So, what has happened since and what will happen next?
Yeah. So The Wife Upstairs, yeah, it was such a like, I was so excited that people were so excited for it and that people really got what I was doing with it. And what we were doing, because like, you know, my editor is like such a huge part of The Wife Upstairs success as well. Um, so yeah, it was especially because like that book, you know, somebody once asked me like, weren't you kind of scared like tackling like a retelling of Jane Eyre? And I'm like, you can't do it if you're going to be scared. Like you've just got to swing for the fences on everything. And so seeing people really get excited about it was really, really cool. So yeah, that was really neat. There's some exciting stuff happening in the background for like TV stuff for it, which I'm really like fingers crossed
You.
that all goes through because I really want to go visit fake Thornfield Estates. So,
I mean, it has to happen. It has to happen.
I think it would be so fun. I think like it's also like that's, you know, there's two, three really like really good parts for women in it, which is very exciting to me too. Like I like the idea of
Mhm.
creating something that an actress would really want to play. So yeah. So
Mhm.
fingers crossed on that. But yeah.
You're also tapping into your teacher vibes because it's things are so much more rewarding when you have that sort of full circle literary background of what you're reading, and so many times just in regular contemporary fiction and modern fiction we've got references to an expectation that a reader has a foundation of having read certain books maybe, and
Right.
so it's great to kind of feed that well and encourage people to be, yeah, like knowing more books and reading more books and consuming
Right.
more material from different times.
Exactly. And I always said too that with The Wife Upstairs, I really wanted I wanted people who loved Jane Eyre to enjoy it. I wanted people who had never even like turned the first page of Jane Eyre. Like the book still absolutely had to work for them on its own merits. But if you have read Jane Eyre or you're familiar with it, then I wanted like these little Easter eggs that you could be like, okay, I see what she's doing there, you know?
She's up to there. She's being clever again.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
Reckless Girls. Now this was, and I actually was just listening now. It just became available as the audio on NetGalley. The second that it came out on NetGalley, I read it. So now I've got like a little bit of a lag because it's like I was too excited for it. I was like, okay, I have to read.
That's
It's
what I
like the
like to
first
hear
thing I'm
though.
requesting. It's the
That's what I
first thing
like
I'm
to hear.
requesting. And then, it's like, okay, I wanted to have it fresh in my mind closer to the book release date, but I was doing things a bit backwards. It was from an enthusiastic perspective. So,
Right.
so take us to the story. Tell us about Lux and about Nico and what type of adventure you're telling in Reckless Girls.
Yes. So the main character in Reckless Girls is a woman named Lux who is living a somewhat aimless existence in Hawaii with her boyfriend, Nico. The idea was that they were going to sail around the world together, but they've sort of stalled out in Hawaii. And Lux is very frustrated with that. They meet these two girls, Brittany and Amma, who offer them an exorbitant amount of money to sail off to a deserted island that has a slightly, okay, not slightly, a very dark history of shipwrecks and cannibalism and people going missing and all kinds of things, but they want to go see it. And so Nico and Lux take them up on this offer. When they get to the island, there are a couple of people already there, and a bunch of shenanigans happen. there's
To say
there's
the
fun
least.
shenanigans for a little while, and then there
Hmm.
are murdery shenanigans, which is kind of what I wanted the book to be. Like I wanted you to at least have a little bit of a good time on the island before it all goes badly. And so yeah, it's a book about class, it's a book about money, it's a book about sex, it's a book about female friendships and toxic relationships, and also it's just a good time on a deserted island. So yeah, a lot happening in Reckless Girls.
A lot happening, and a lot of as you move us through the story. I mean, it is true, it's like the tone changes and you're, we're on a fun adventure and the guy is hot and it's exciting to go out on a boat, and she's grieving the loss of her mom and is just kind of lost anyway, and then these people, I mean, there's just all of these doors that could be open to provide opportunities for her, or are they not, and everybody has a backstory, and so it's very, it's a fantastic ride for the reader to be on this journey, and especially because I feel like I haven't been to an island in so long, so I was really wanting to have that water scenery anyways, and I could really see it in my
Exactly,
mind.
exactly. I actually went back in October. A bunch of similarly vaccinated friends and myself went to Antigua, which so I told myself I could go do a tropical vacation if I sold Reckless Girls, and then I had, and then the world changed. So this was kind of finally I got to go, and we were out on a boat, and I saw like a sailboat out in the distance, just against the blue sky and the blue water. And I literally got choked up because I was like, I spent so much time envisioning that in my head writing this book. Like I'd almost started to believe I would never get to see it in the real world again. So I
Oh,
was so thankful for that little like glimpse. And I was like, oh, I hope they're not going to Meroe Island, which isn't a real place, but I'm still fingers crossed for them.
and then later, did you guys turn on each other and things go really dark between you and your friends? Are we
No,
legally, we
luckily
probably shouldn't mention it in case
it
the
all
police
worked
would
out
listen.
great, although I will say that like none of these friends are writers, they're actually all architects, which was very funny too, because like we would be places and they would be like, "Ooh, this is not really up to code," and I'm like, "Oh, would that make it like easier to like murder somebody in here then? Like it could more plausibly be an accident?" And they were like, "What's wrong with you?" But one of my friends was like, oh, have you finished I used to call this book the boat murder book. And she was like, you finished with boat murder, right? Because like we could like push somebody off a boat and see what happens. Let us help you research. I was like, no, we're good. It's done now. Thanks though. I like
We
the
need you to be
spirit.
able, you can describe the splash that the human body makes when it wasn't expecting it and it has rocks in the pocket. Like,
Right. She was like, we could just roll Phil off this raft and just see what happens. I was like, let's not.
you said you loved reading and being in the library and all of that from an early age. At what point did you realize that you were creative enough, that you had enough going on in here to be telling these stories? Were you writing short stories when you were a kid? I mean, were you always confident about it, or did you ever grapple with, is this just interesting to me?
Yeah, I wrote a ton as a kid. I loved to write. I never thought of it as like something that was going to be a career necessarily when I was a kid. It was really just kind of for fun. I was also like, I am an only child. And so I was very imaginative anyway, and was always like making up like, playing pretend and things like that. And so eventually writing down stories seemed like a natural progression. Like you reach an age where people sort of frown on it if you're wearing costumes in your bedroom and talking to yourself and running around. So you start making up people to wear the costumes and run around. So yeah, I wrote all kinds of things when I was a kid. I won a short story contest for my state when I was like 13. I won an essay contest when I was 18. So I was definitely immersed in it and was very lucky to have extremely supportive teachers and very supportive parents. Like those two contests that I entered are solely because I had a teacher that was like, here's the opportunity, you should try this. So I'm very thankful. It's actually the same teacher both times. So thank you, Nancy Wingo. So yeah, I was always writing like that, but I didn't think it was going to be a career. Again, I'm from Alabama, and I was growing up in like the 80s and 90s. So, these days people have so much access to authors, that we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, you can listen to us on podcasts. Back then, I didn't know any authors. Like I just assumed they all lived in New York and did author things. So yeah, it really was not until like my mid 20s that I really started like kind of coming back to the idea of writing as a career. I definitely wasn't like, I can do this, 100%. But I also like just took a big leap when I was about 27 and just said like, that's it. I'm writing a book. I'm going for it. And if it doesn't work, then it's over or whatever, but I've got to try. But that was more born out of like desperation and just like that sort of like quarter life crisis of like, oh, I can't keep doing the job that I'm doing. I got to do something else. Let me try the big dream,
Thank goodness you did. It is funny because, especially as people adapted to doing their book tours virtually and the way that we've switched over to book club virtually, there are some things that have been a real gift over the last couple of
Right.
years.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I mean, these connections that people are able to make with a storyteller that is really, I mean, to me, before, authors were like mythical creatures. I mean, yeah,
right, exactly. And no, like we're just sitting in our houses. Every once in a while we slap on makeup and like actually pretend like we know things. But yeah, it's been great though to get to do these. Yeah.
It is, and it's been, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing to feel also on the journey of, you're a fan of somebody's work, that anticipation of what's coming next, and kind of being in on the team and waiting for it. It's like
Right.
when I saw
Yeah.
that, when I saw your book cover pop up on that gallery, I'm like, oh, we just request. Check you back. Are they going to reject? So that's very exciting. I imagine it's like a dating app or something, because I've been married
Yeah,
too
no,
long. I
and
never got to do that.
authors feel the same way. Like I'm still get like so excited when somebody new has like a book coming out that, sometimes just a cover. I'm like, oh, okay, I have to have that immediately, so yeah.
It seems that there is a great sense of community between many writers who share their process, which I find really interesting because it's obviously such a solitary profession. So and you seem to be a very outgoing person who probably enjoys people. So how do you balance the work and sort of the need for human connection, or is it kind of, comes and goes?
Yeah, I'm a big believer. Stephen King has this great saying that I read before I even started writing. I read his book on writing when I think I was like 19 or 20. And it's always stuck with me, which is that he was like, life is not a support system for art. Art is a support system for life. And to me, that just means that like you're writing. I think sometimes we have this idea of like the artist like away somewhere in their, their sacred space and you can't go in there or whatever. But I'm a big believer that like I write in the midst of my life. And, I have a husband, I have a child, I have my mom, we've got things going on. I've got friends and friends who are in publishing, friends who aren't in publishing. And I try to just remember that like, my books, I love writing, I love what I do, but it's not who I am. And that writing the books is what allows me to live this life that I really enjoy, where I get to talk about books and I get to make up things in my head and talk to readers and things like that. But that's all sort of part and parcel of life, and again, like there are days when you're really on a streak and then like, oh, your kid forgot the thing that he absolutely has to have at school. And so, well, you're getting in the car and that chapter will come later or whatever, or you might tell him to suck it up and that he needs to remember things more often, but that's for later in life. um, so yeah, that's the biggest thing. It's just sort of like keeping, and there, it won't always be in balance. There are times where I've really got to put my nose to the grindstone because it's a deadline or that kind of thing. But I really try to stay as much in balance. And again, just my books are what I make, they're not who I am, and that has like served me very well through a writing career so far.
That is a really good philosophy, because it's your baby, I'm sure, when you're putting
Yeah,
something out into the world. And so I'm kind of in awe over how willing writers are today to, kind of answer questions about the actual plot, or even on social media. I mean, it's even in my business and news, we come off of the show and, well, why are you wearing that? Or your hair looks terrible, whatever. The
yeah,
social media is just like, it's your mom telling you like all the criticism she's had for you forever, but
right.
I don't even know you, so
Yeah, and you're
it's
like,
just a lot.
you would not come up to a stranger on the street and be like, I hate your dress. You wouldn't do that. So why do you do that? And we definitely get that too. I'm so surprised every once in a while. People aren't bad about it on Twitter, but on Instagram, they'll make like this absolutely beautiful post of your book, like your book with all these like gorgeous, like they really spent time making this beautiful post. And then the thing will be like 1 out of 5 stars. I hated this book more than I can say. And they'll have tagged you. And you're like, what is happening? I don't understand. Why is this happening? Just, you can hate it, but you don't need to tell me you hate it. And why spend time making it look pretty? It's the strangest thing.
Think of who we had the podcast earlier that was so funny, and said, oh, it was Lisa Joel. She
Yeah.
said, there is zero point in telling an author, I didn't like the book, or I didn't like how you ended it, because it's already done. It's out in the world. It's
Yeah.
not, you're not in the editing process. It's not like sending your chicken back, then they're going to cook it a little bit more because it's raw. This book is cooked.
Exactly. It's
Done.
done. And there's such a like long lead time in publishing. So like, I was done with Reckless Girls, like done, through with edits, the whole thing packed away December of last year. So by the time it comes out, it's been over a year since I last tinkered with it. So there's also times where I'm like, oh, is that what I said? I forgot, like I've written 3 books since then, and so my brain is still in those.
That was my other self. I don't know what she was thinking at the
Exactly.
time.
That's way in the past now.
So then, does that allow for the opportunity for you to actually, before a book is released and before you're doing a book tour and all of that, to sit down and read it and try to enjoy it or appreciate it as a reader would?
Sometimes, like I don't do it very often. Weirdly enough, it's easier for me with like my romance. I've reread that one several times because I was working on the sequel, so I was trying to be sure that I was, and that one I had a weird distance from, and maybe it's because it's not my name on the cover, I don't know, or maybe it's because that was a fairly easy book to write. Now, romance is very hard. That is in no way to say that romance is somehow easy. I have the second book is now like 6 months late because it's been so hard to write. But that one had just been a really pleasant and easy writing experience. Reckless Girls, on the other hand, was a really tough thing to write. It went through a lot of edits just as we were trying to we knew the story that was in there, but kind of getting to it was tough. So that one I have not reread because it went through so many versions in my head that I'm like, I probably should sit down, and I think I might listen to it. That might actually be what I need to do.
A different perspective on it.
Exactly.
So you squeeze in your writing amidst having a regular, real life and not giving up everything, everything
Right.
else. And you don't live in a cave and you're not in any kind of
No.
solitary confinement situation. So what is your process? What is your schedule? Do you carve out time? Do you designate time each day? Is there a certain space you like to be in? Are you a computer person, a note person, an audio note, a snacker, what? Loud music during total silence.
Yeah, it's so funny. It kind of depends on the book in a lot of ways. So like I've written books in very different ways, and I think I've written 14 or 15 now. So I've definitely each one has kind of been its own beast. It's been interesting writing books over the last couple of years because I used to be very much a coffee shop person. So I have a local friend who's also a writer, and we would meet at a coffee shop and do that. And then we couldn't anymore. And then I sort of got used to writing at home again. I don't write every day because that just doesn't work for me. I have to write. This sounds awful. I basically, if it's not done before noon, it's probably not getting done, has always kind of been my philosophy. I'm an early morning person. So ideally, I love waking up before anybody else in the house and having that kind of quiet time where there's people in the house, but it's still very still and quiet. And yeah, it takes me usually about 3 months to draft a book. And then I take a huge amount of time off. Like I am always a big believer in like filling the well. So that's for me. If I wrote every day, it just, I wouldn't have any story left eventually. What else do I do? Now, I am definitely a computer person, although I will buy any techno gadget related to writing. I have like several like tiny word processors that were extremely overpriced and like multiple like mechanical keyboards. There's one behind me right here. So I love anything like that. I do take notes as I'm going, just on a like a legal pad. I buy pink legal pads because I once read that Jacqueline Suzanne, who wrote Valley of the Dolls, wrote all of her books on pink legal pads. So I buy a lot of those. And yeah, it's a very kind of unglamorous, like here lately, I've been writing in my guest room. I just moved a desk in there during the pandemic. And I tend to write in 20-minute bursts. So I'll set a timer for 20 minutes, go take a little like 2 to 5 minute break, another 20 minutes, little break, another 20 minutes. That I feel has really, it's amazing how if I told myself like sit down and work for an hour, I won't get nearly as much work done as I will if I do 3 20-minute bursts, which is a weird brain hack. There's an author named Tess Sharp who taught me that trick, and it's really, really worked. As for like what I listen to, I like noise canceling headphones with like a rain app on. Music tends to distract me, but I need noise.
Some noise.
So a rain app helps. And I don't snack, but I go through gallons of sparkling water. Like I can tell that a book is getting near finished when there's like 12 cans lined up on the back of my desk. I'm like, okay, well, I'm done then.
This was productive.
Yeah, this was good. I was very hydrated as I worked on this.
Burp. Okay, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah,
good.
Exactly.
It's incredible the way. So I mean, I think everybody who really loves to read thinks, oh gosh, could I ever write a book? Oh my gosh, it seems so daunting. And, where would you begin? And all of that. I love the concept of sitting down for 20 minutes and seeing what you could get out.
It is amazing what you can do in 20 minutes. I mean, and I always tell people that when they sit down to write a book, that is so daunting. But if you want to do it and you say and you don't even have to do 20, you can do 10 minutes. You can say, I'm going to sit down for 10 minutes today and write something. And that's it. That's all I got to do. A book will get written at the end of that. It might not be as quickly as you would like, but it will get done. There's no kind of time crunch on it.
I mean, it might not be something anybody wants to read. I mean,
Right.
you're coming with the confidence, people want to read it. You know what you're doing. When someone's just starting out, it's like, especially if you love to read, because you do have high standards. This is why I don't cook, because I know it takes me a lot of effort and it doesn't taste good. And so I'd rather just eat other people's food.
Right.
So I feel the writing would be the same thing.
And although I always do tell people, please remember that by the time you read a book on the shelf, it has gone through so many people's hands in terms of making it better and polishing it. And so many talented people are working behind the scenes. And then only my name ends up on the front. But I was not the only person responsible for it being readable.
So you do outline everything. So when you're starting out, you do know where it's going at the end.
Yes, I did not used to outline. When I was writing YA, I usually didn't. I realized very quickly with thrillers that I was absolutely going to have to outline because I needed to know where all the sort of twists and turns went. And thriller readers are some of the smartest readers in the world, and they read everything, And so I had said that I want the reader to almost always be at least one step ahead of the characters in terms of what's going on. But I need to be one step ahead of the reader, at least, if I can.
Right.
So yes, I outline, but I outline really, really loosely. Like I said, I used to be a high school English teacher. There is none of the Roman numerals, capital letter. We're not doing that.
It's laminated and
exactly. None of that. It is literally, I sit down and I write out the plot in the simplest language possible. Just it usually ends up being about 10 pages of just, paragraphs, then this happens, then this happens, then, and that just sort of gives me my basis to sort of see where I'm going from there.
Because it seems everybody has a different, and you say even within genres, you have a different strategy. You would talk to a lot of people who say, yes, I'm outlining start to finish. I need to know where it's going, especially in these genres. And then also those who are writing within these genres that say they have absolutely no idea where the book is going themselves. And that just blows my mind.
It's crazy that we always say there's no right way to write a book. If it works for you, it's right. It's totally what you should do. I'm friendly with Megan Miranda, who is just a genius thriller writer. And she has this book, All the Missing Girls, that takes place, it goes backwards chronologically. And she told me she did not outline that. And I was like, Megan, how? You genius person. That is so crazy to me. But it worked, and it's a great and brilliant book. So I would have lost my mind, but she could do that. And I do say too that even when I outline, though, I still try to keep myself open to better versions of the story, because sometimes until you're in it, you don't really know it. When I first started Reckless Girls, it was much more crimey. There's, obviously crimes happen in the book, but it was much more plotted and methodical and all this. And there was this real plan in place that was happening and all this kind of stuff. And with each draft, the crime elements just got more and more chaotic. But I remember saying to my editor, but that's actually the interesting story to me, that it isn't necessarily that there's something super well plotted here. It's just that this combination of people begins to result in these sorts of things. And that was really, and so, yeah, it's about opening yourself up to well, what kind of book are you really trying to tell? Can't get too locked into the outline.
Reckless Girls, and the once they get to the island, I mean, of course, at first, I love it because it had all these visuals to me, and it kind of like brings up different. I mean, thinking of like Leonardo DiCaprio at the movie The Beach, and then
Yes,
you're
yes.
kind of thinking of Lord of the Flies,
Mhm.
and a book I read as a child, The Island of the Blue Dolphins, where
Oh,
it's
that's such a good one. Yeah.
things like just all these elements, and how gorgeous, and how everybody the kind of dreams of being in some place that seems so private, or so hardly touched, or very few people have been there, and not commercialized. And then just the feel of the island starts to pull, and that energy there. How did you, or for those who are listening and about to get this book, haven't read it yet, how would you describe the feel on Meroe Island?
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I really did want it to I wanted that tension to amp up. And I love those kinds of stories. The beach was a huge touchstone for this book. Um, and then you also, like you said, like Island of the Blue Dolphins, Blue Lagoon, which looms large in many young ladies' minds, and probably some gentlemen as well. Things like that. So you have this, I really wanted it to feel like paradise at first. It's got to feel inviting and all those things. But one of the things that my editor and I kept talking about as we were working on it was you always are looking at the flip side. So like everything that makes this place beautiful and wonderful and untouched and all that is also what makes it a very scary place to be in a lot of ways. It's freedom until it's feeling unmoored, until you need help, until then being off the grid is only fun when everything's going well. And so yeah, I just wanted to keep building up that tension. One of the ways that we've described this book too is basically island gothic, whereas and sort of building off The Wife Upstairs, which is very much a modern gothic. I wanted the island to feel like a haunted house. So the house looms so large in gothics, and I was like, the island is just one giant natural haunted house. It looks beautiful, it has all these, it seems like it's like paradise and the perfect place for you, but there's darkness and secrets underneath.
Most people, if they are, I mean, kind of emotionally open, or empathic, or whatever, that there are places that you go and step into, certainly not to this extent,
Yeah.
hopefully, but where you just feel things feel off, or feel creepy, or feel unsafe in some
Mhm.
visceral kind of, can't articulate it in anything way that makes sense way.
Right.
And that's just there.
Yeah, yeah, and that's definitely something I was like aiming for with this too, especially when you're like, we're on the beach and it's great, but like what's in the jungle behind us? Like it gets very dark very fast. It's all in the sunshine and then suddenly everything's all hidden. Yeah, and you're exactly right. We have all been in those places where we were like, I just don't have a good vibe. I don't know what it is, but I don't want to be here. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we've gotta
absolutely.
go. Before we wrap up, fundamentally at the start of our story, it's Lux feeling like she's fallen in love, and falling in love with somebody who has a very different background from her, and they are sort of living they're not artists, because he wants to be out on the boat, but that struggling
Yeah, it's
lifestyle.
a very bohemian kind of crashing
Yes.
on couches, and yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
But
Yeah,
for her, that's a lifestyle by necessity. For him, it's a lifestyle by choice. And
right.
I just kept feeling like, oh my gosh, girl, I know you have been through a lot, and I know this guy sounds absolutely gorgeous, but it's making me crazy.
Yeah, no, and it's meant to, exactly, because he is not Nico was one of my favorite characters to create, because I feel like we've all known guys like that. Life has handed them everything, but in his case, he's like, but I am rejecting that. And you're like, okay, but you could like make a phone call. As she keeps saying, he could make a phone call and all of our struggles are over. He's struggling for the romanticism of it, not because it's real. It's playing pretend, basically. So yeah, he was very, and it was a fine line to walk with making him where you're like, I get where he's charming and appealing, and I also see where like this girl, come on, like this guy is not the guy. He's not the guy for anyone, probably. Yeah.
He's, he's not the guy for you, not right now, at the very least. Do you have do you have a familiarity with boats? Because I know we do some boating in Wife Upstairs as well.
Yes, I know. I joke that like boats and caves keep showing up in all of my books for some reason.
Uh-huh.
There are no caves in Wife Upstairs, but I don't think I think I cut a cave thing in Reckless Girls. Um, but no, my dad was a sailor, he was in the Navy. And we had a very small sailboat when I was a kid. The part of Alabama that I'm from is very, very close to the Florida border, like 15 minutes away. So we had a boat in Panama City. And yeah, I always loved boats. I haven't been out on one, or like I've never sailed myself. um, but I haven't been out on a sailboat in a very long time. But yeah, I love a good nautical thriller too, any sort of beach boat book. I'm all for it. So yeah. See, I
Yeah,
was
it
finally
just
like, that's why I
adds.
said this was boat murder. I kept saying like for years, I was like, I'm gonna write a boat murder book.
Surrounded by the expansive water and just how it's the shrinking of humanity, right? I mean, you're just this little speck out in the water, and it's sort of it parallels or enhances that vulnerability of whatever
Right,
situation
exactly.
they're
Like I
in.
said, it's freedom and then it's also extreme vulnerability. Yeah,
Yeah,
on the
I like
other
to be able to call for help at any given time.
end. Same.
And it doesn't take a real emergency for me to need help. Well,
No.
Rachel, it has been an absolute delight to talk to you. I mean, congratulations on another great book. And if people are listening and you have not yet picked up Reckless Girls, it is available now. It's going to be certainly on everybody's 2022 must read list. And if for some reason, by some crazy fluke, you didn't get the Wife Upstairs, and get on it already. Um, is there anything that we should be watching out for this year from you, Rachel, in particular, as
Um,
super fans?
yeah, so we've got Reckless Girls. I am almost finished with my 2023 thriller, which doesn't have an official name yet, but should be out January 2023. And it is another vacation book, but this time it's a villa in Italy. And it's two best
Oh,
friends who go to the site of a famous murder that happened between rock star types in the 70s and begin to realize the connections between what happened 40 years ago and their own friendship. So it's a good time. It's another kind of, like I said with my thrillers, I like to swing for the fences. So it's another big swing. But yeah, and then and again, the X-Hex, my romance under Erin Sterling, is out now, and the sequel to that will hopefully be out fall of 2022 as well.
she is on a roll of total domination. Please tell me that were you able to go to Italy to do some research? I mean, it seems like you would need to
No,
see
I
all of that in
luckily
person.
I had been to Italy. My husband's a geologist and he had taught a class over there in 2016. So I luckily had been to Italy before and was able to draw on those experiences. But yeah, hopefully next year maybe we can get back there.
An international book tour.
Exactly. The books are in Italy. Come on, guys.
What? But the least we could do. The publisher saved a lot of money during these virtual tours, so it's got
Exactly.
to
So
work
come
out.
on. Yeah.
Rachel Hawkins, congratulations, and thank you so much for joining us on Olivia's Book Club.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, guys, it's Margaret Stewart, the producer here on Olivia's Book Club, the podcast, with A Moment with Margaret. And a little different this week. Olivia and I are not in studio together to do this moment. So it's just a moment with Margaret by herself. And it's kind of exciting, though, because I did get to listen to Olivia and Rachel Hawkins talk about Reckless Girls as if I were a listener, as I heard it for the first time. Just as you did, and I really enjoyed it. And as a listener and as a reader, I was so excited to hear more about how Rachel Hawkins gets into her landscapes and a little bit of her own kind of research, if you will. And so that was so nice to hear that, and excited to see what she has coming out next. The kind of explorer, deserted island, little suspenseful trope here really made me think about a book I listened to with my sister and one of her friends in an audiobook driving down through California this holiday season. It, believe it or not a holiday book. It's called Bloody Jack by L.A. Meyer. This is actually a recommendation to my sister and me from friends of hers that said, listen, you're going to really love this book. L.A. Meyer, all of the books that come from this series are just so great. And once you hear the first one, you're going to want to listen or read the rest of them. And once the audio started, I thought, there's no way I'm getting through this. The narration is very, very British, but like streets of London, a little nitty, a little gritty. And really what the premise is, Bloody Jack is actually a girl who was living on the streets and decided to join up with to become a sailor, and hopped on a ship, but had to disguise herself as a man or as a boy to be taken on the ship, and then gets to go around and fight off pirates and just see the world. And that was really exciting for her, but she had to live in secrecy amongst the other boys and the other men and just try to keep everything a secret. And, doesn't always go out the way you want it to, but she had a lot of really great adventures and was so excited to be on the open ocean. And that's kind of what we saw with Rachel Hawkins' book, wanting to be out on the open ocean, be an explorer, see where the winds take you, and things happen along the way that get a little spooky, and we love that. And, I really enjoyed listening to the audiobook. Although neither one of these, I'm so sorry to tell Olivia in this moment, she probably won't hear it until the podcast comes out. Surprise. You, Olivia, had a nice resolution for me in 2022, which was to slow down my audiobooks. And the thing is, I listened to them at 2 times the speed as it's supposed to be listened to at, regular speed. And she thinks I should slow it down in the new year. I'm really sorry. I did not slow it down. Maybe next time, though I really don't foresee me doing that either. Hey, time is money. And that just gives me more time to listen to other really great books. And, I wrapped up 2021 with 100 books read. I'm hopeful to get to 125. And that means I have to speed it up a little bit, right? 2 times the speed. But maybe I will challenge myself to slow it down and kind of take the words as they come. But we'll see. But if you would like to read my suggestion this week, it's Bloody Jack by L.A. Meyer. And I know it came out 12 years ago, but just give me a break. Really wasn't reading all that much 12 years ago. So I'd like to thank Brad and Christine Pennington for that recommendation, and loved listening to it with my sister in the car for almost 6 hours. Thanks for the introduction to L.A. Meyer, and thank you for listening to Olivia's Book Club, the podcast. I'm Margaret Stewart, your producer, and this has been A Moment with Margaret. Have a great one.
I'm your host, Olivia Fierro. Our producer is Margaret Stewart. We want to hear from you, so send us an email to oliviasbookclub@azfamily.com. Let us know what you're reading, and check out the Olivia's Book Club Facebook group, or you can follow along on Instagram at olivias.bookclub, or Margaret is at Overbooked and Overdue. Make sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast, and please tell your friends.